Everybody always talks about Reno's home prices and what their opinions of them are. Are we expensive? Are we not? Should we rent? Should we buy? And those are just the tip of the iceberg. But what is the real cost to live here? As we head into the new year, we want to talk about insurance, utilities, taxes, commuting, and of course, lifestyle costs. And some of them will even surprise you locals. With this topic, we try to do about once a year, and today we want to bring Sydney Lessinger in as always. So we want to do is walk you through the real numbers and what the reality of life and costs here are in Reno and Northern Nevada. Real quick, because I don't want to hammer too much on the housing cost part of this, but we're going to start there. And as someone who has been a realtor now for a couple of years, but also probably has enough money to afford a down payment on a house, is still currently renting. And so let's talk about like the pros and cons of this real quick and mention to people. One, with the buyers we're working with, what are they saying about, or what questions might they be asking about the cost of what it is to come here?
Typically, we get into the closing cost type of things. That's where people get really under a microscope and they only think about the real estate transaction itself versus all of the costs of homeownership.
Right.
There's a whole lot more besides your principal and interest. Those are the kinds of things that I try to remind them of and bring them back to, hey, yes, we are looking here at the moment, but we need to make sure that we broaden our thinking in the other things about homeownership versus renting, where your monthly payment when you rent is your monthly payment. That is what it is, versus when you own a home, you have your monthly payment, but you have these additional costs or potential costs.
Well, and I know people like to assume that just because they've locked in their rent for 12 months, that that's what it's going to be. After 12 months, you never know what it's going to be. And just, just because you're a renter doesn't mean that if you break or damage something that you're not liable to fix it and pay for that yourself. So it's not perfectly your only cost. But for people that are watching our videos and are thinking about coming here, the biggest thing I want them to understand is if you're not familiar with the area or you don't know that you're going to live here for a long time, renting in the short term might be a possibility. A lot of you guys that reach out to us do say, hey, we're coming, we're going to rent for 6 months or 12 months as we learn the area and then go to buy. But I think as far as home prices go and things like that, depending on where you're coming from, people will decide, are we affordable or not? I think people think of us as being more affordable on the housing front than we're going to be. And so without beating that dead horse in there, our home prices are more expensive than you think they're going to be. Our rents are going to be more expensive than they're going to be. But as we talked about in previous cost of living type videos, that if you can get this piece, the housing piece, the rental piece figured out, the rest of what we're talking about today usually is pretty fair and affordable compared to most of what you're going to see on the West Coast. And so again, as someone who is 24 years old, how come right now you're renting versus buying? And you're in the real estate industry. And it's funny because some people say, well, how can you use a realtor that doesn't own a home? For someone who just got out of college 2 years ago and now has been doing this, why are you renting versus buying?
I want to buy so bad. That is a conversation you and I have
all the time.
All the time. Why I not necessarily can't, but shouldn't buy now is the monthly payment with the interest rates where they currently are is unaffordable to me in terms of being able to save money to prepare for those big things that happen with your house, whether it's your HVAC, your roof, your day-to-day maintenance on your property. There's so much more to homeownership that I'm not in a financial situation to be doing yet in a smart way. Could I go out and buy a property right now? Sure. Is that advantageous to my future? Probably not.
And when we say that, it's because Sydney is one person.
Right.
So I think in today's world and in our housing market and a lot of housing markets, if you're trying to buy houses, one income families, it's very difficult. So if she could do it, she would have to have a roommate, potentially two roommates, and depending on how big a house and things you went on. And even in a more traditional, like if you went to rent a house, it'd be the same kind of thing as far as trying to find that goes. Now, a lot of the questions we get regarding housing becomes insurance, and whether it's insurance on a house, whether it's healthcare insurance, whether it's auto insurance. I mean, obviously you have your own car and you deal with your own insurance. Most of those costs, it's funny. We just did this. I full disclosure, I have all my insurance through State Farm. Yeah. And what did we just do?
We just had our accounts audited, sort of, to basically see, are we getting a fair rate? Are we being covered how we should be? Are we paying more than we should be?
Yeah, I went actually out and got an insurance broker that my friend gave me that then kind of just shops all the insurance companies. And she basically told me all my policies, she goes, you're getting great rates at great prices with great coverage. You should just stick out with where you are. Yeah. So as much as I see all these videos and all these things talking about don't use the State Farms and the big companies, I seem to be getting really good prices on my stuff. And the other question that people are asking, of course, is can you even get insurance on a house because of all the fires and all the things that have been coming up lately? We haven't seen a ton of that.
No, sometimes what we'll see is just additional coverage policies where if you're in a property that is in a high fire danger area, there's potentially bigger pieces of coverage that you need out of your home insurance.
Right.
And then, for example, in the area that we live in, even though it is very unlikely to happen, there's flood areas all over the place that you potentially need some flood coverage for.
Right. And now, again, as a 24-year-old who owns basically a 1.5-year-old car, auto insurance?
Yeah, that for me is not crazy expensive. It's a newer car, so it's going to be more expensive than, say, your car, for example. I think I pay $130 a month for it.
Right, so
which,
not too
which
bad.
isn't terrible, but because my car is newer,
right.
it's going to be a little bit more expensive. And also, I am younger. That's kind of a dual-headed spear
Well,
there.
we felt like the prices were pretty good on that. And then the other one people ask about is healthcare. Now, we're self-employed people, so I'm paying for my own healthcare, so I feel like my healthcare is expensive.
Right.
I think a lot of people get their healthcare for, I don't want to say for free, but included in their jobs. And I would say when they ask about how good is the healthcare, I would say, until you're really sick, you just don't know.
Right.
But for basic healthcare things, we're affordable. It's been good access, all those kind of things. Now, as we're talking about this, let's go into utilities. So you've got a lot of friends who rent apartments, whatever the case may be. So whether it's power, water, trash, sewer, internet, all those things. And when we've done deep dive researches into some previous cost living videos, I didn't want to get too number crunchy today.
Right.
I think our stuff's all pretty good. I know when I talk to my girlfriend who lives in Washington, my utility bills are substantially cheaper for hers on water, power, and those kind of things for sure. What are your friends saying to you? I know you got a couple that rent apartments. How do they feel about it?
It's pretty inexpensive, to be honest, and especially how they do it in certain apartment complexes. Sometimes they'll flat fee you and basically just say your utilities are $75 a month for everything, all included, no worries.
I was say, so I talk about like the water bill at my house.
Yeah.
In the wintertime, what we get charged like the minimum water bill. But in the summertime, we maybe pay $100, and I'm doing sprinklers.
Yeah, that's grass in the front and back.
Right. So, I mean, just to give people an idea, I don't know what they pay in other parts of the country. Obviously, if you're on a well, those are going to be different setups, but maintenance on a well is not free. My power bill is typically somewhere in that $60 to $100 a month. I mean, all these bills are relatively inexpensive, and I'm guessing this is not where people are complaining about that. Usually, if they're complaining, it's more about things like gas and food costs than they are their basic utilities. I think a lot of basic utilities are somewhat limited in what they're allowed to do the increases on. So it seems like those compared to all the people I talk to, especially coming from other states that are moving here, is pretty comparable. But the gas one is the most hilarious one to me. I just took a trip and I was on the East Coast. I was in Pennsylvania and I buy diesel gas. My car's a diesel. So I've been in the $4 to $4.50 a dollar a gallon range. When I was there, I was paying in Pennsylvania. We had a rental car and the gas was under $3 a gallon. So Californians would love some $4 a gallon gas, let alone under $3.
Yeah.
So again, it all is relative depending on where you're coming from. Yeah. We'll figure those things out. Now, another big one we always want to talk about is taxes. We have beat the dead horse. Everybody knows Nevada has no state income taxes, so we're not even going to talk about that one. But our property and sales taxes, because a lot of people who move here, that's one of their other big questions, because we're talking about people buying homes, and we want them to realize that your house payment isn't just, your principal and interest, but it's your taxes and insurance. And we already said insurance has got some pretty good numbers. Property taxes. Explain to them as much as we can. We've had people actually come to our office meetings and try to explain this to us, but give them a ballpark idea of how property taxes work here and are a little bit different than what you see in California.
In California, your property taxes are based off of the purchase price or the sale price of your home when it goes to transfer ownership. Here, it is not based off of that. It is based off of the year that your property was constructed.
That initial assessed value.
Yep. You get tax assessed right when your property is built. And then we're on a 3-year cap or a 3% annual cap for your rate increasing. And then for certain rental properties, you had talked to me a little bit about this.
On rental properties, you're starting to see this, and I know it happened in one of my rentals in another part of the country, and I think it's starting to happen here. We'll have to do a little deep research for them on this one, where that 3% per year cap is actually now a bigger number. I've heard things like 8%. I don't know. We'll have to find out the details on that. But property taxes, so what happens is for people is if you go out and see 3 $700,000 homes, but one was built in the 70s and one was built last year, the home that's a year old is going to definitely have higher property taxes than the house that was built in the 70s. And that we did a video on once of talking about that exact thing. So just know when you're thinking about your affordability, property tax is one of the things that we'll talk about as far as that goes. And we briefly mentioned this one, but transportation. In our area, this is a car town. There are buses and ways to get around, but it's pretty much a car town. Yeah. And we already said gas is a little bit expensive. Why is it expensive?
Our gas is expensive because we are taxed straight into our gas price, and it goes directly into our roads. So people a lot of the time will see all sorts of road construction projects going on. We have one on 580. We have one on I-80. Pyramid Highway, or Pyramid Way, I guess I should say, is under construction. And That's all coming from our gas. Our roads are really nice. People have told me that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Coming from California, they're like, I'm used to driving basically through potholes all day, every day, and we don't luckily really have that problem.
There's a few side streets and things like everywhere that has them that needs some repair, but it is part of why if you're buying gas in Reno and Sparks versus, let's say, Fernley or Carson, the surrounding areas, Washoe County gas is more expensive. Our registration and things like that is relatively solid. You and me both have older cars. I just got my registration for my 15-year-old car. It was $117. So those kind of things are not too bad. If you're someone who's thinking about moving to Northern Nevada, do me a favor. Click the link in the description below. We'll get you a copy of our free buyer's guide. That'll get you a lot of great information that you need to know on your journey to Northern Nevada. Let's switch gears a little bit here and we talk about lifestyle and other daily expenses. So whether it's, again, my lifestyle turns more into like skiing and golfing. Right. Yours might be more going out with your friends and going out for dinners and having a beer once in a while. I don't feel like it's a whole lot different than in other areas, but what do you guys see with your, in the 20 and 30-year-old age group that you're hanging out with?
The difference for me, my biggest comparison is Missoula, which is where I lived when I was in college. And certain things up there are much more expensive because of its proximity to other areas. But coming home, where the biggest difference was, and this is so hysterical, is alcohol. The price of alcohol here is much more expensive than I have experienced it elsewhere, where you can get $2 beers in Montana. Here, they're $6.
Right.
That's the biggest kind of price comparison. But honestly, our groceries and things along those lines, we might be a little bit more expensive than most other places, but I don't really think that it's crazy unaffordable.
I know my girlfriend's house in Washington, man, the food is way more expensive up there. And we joke about it all the time because, like, I saw the video. They grow 70% of the world's apples are grown in Washington. You can see them all over town. I can't figure why you walk into a store and the apple's $3.
Right.
When I can literally walk outside and grab one off a tree. But it's just crazy how that works. And again, me and my friends travel around the country. We're in Airbnbs a lot, so we're in grocery stores a lot. And I just think it's pretty reasonable most around the country. The last one we want to touch real quick is a lot of the people that have been moving here are moving into what we are calling upgraded or premium living neighborhoods. And so we made a little note about that where if you're living in the Arrow Creeks or Montrose or Somersets or Collin Ranches, what things they need to expect in those areas that are going to be a little more expensive than in some of these other areas.
Your HOA fees, first off, in some of those neighborhoods, because they're trying to maintain a certain expectation of how the homes look, how the common areas look, you'll see higher HOA fees there, but that directly correlates to certain community amenities, that relates to common area landscaping, all of those things you're paying for a specific outcome with that neighborhood wanting to kind of maintain a certain level of beauty.
And it's funny because we get a lot of people asking us that are maybe trying to be in the more affordable end on condos. And condos you have to be careful with, again, because those HOA fees and things can be more expensive. And we tell people sometimes, if you would just go out and buy a smaller house, not in an HOA or in an HOA like mine where I pay basically like $400 a year, then you can go out and hire landscapers and house cleaners and people that, offset the HOA fee that you can now afford to have some of those things done for you as well. So long story short is this. The cost of living in Northern Nevada is definitely not as inexpensive as I think people think it was going to be, especially now that the number one thing is you got to get your mortgage, your rent, your housing situation figured out. And that is our number one area of expertise. So if you're someone who is obviously watching this channel that is either thinking about moving here, whether you're buying or renting, and I tell people, again, renting is more of a short-term solution. I get it. If you don't know the areas and you're not sure what to do yet, just reach out to us. Any other last little cost of living things that you think anyone needs to be cautious or careful of?
When you register a brand new car like I did 2 years ago, it is more expensive than you think it's going to be because I was shocked. Other than that, no.
If you have any specific questions about any other topics we maybe didn't touch on, or you can always go back to look at a year ago or 2 years ago. We've done these cost of living videos about once a year, and it's a little more number crunchy, a little more detailed than those. So you can always check those out as well, because today I wanted to keep a little more high level for you guys. If you're someone who's trying to figure out, is it affordable to live in Northern Nevada? Check out this video we did right here.